This is cool.
All right, I'd like to open tonight's City Commission meeting, July 26, 2022. I'd like to welcome everyone and ask you to please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'd like to welcome Bishop Walter Simpson for the prayer tonight.
Let us pray. Father God, we thank you for another day. We thank you for blessing us to come together. Now, God, we ask you to bless our commission, our mayors, and we ask you to touch everyone here. God, let us watch out for the city and give us the directions that you need for us these days. And we thank you again, God, for this opportunity to pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. All right, I'd like to open public input. If there's anyone who'd like to speak at the podium, please come up and state your name and your address and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
My name is Martin Dupsloff. I live at 2204 South Homer Street. And I want to move along with the meeting so we can get Oxford House people here. But I just wanted to thank you, Cheryl and Darren, for providing this forum for the citizens to come together and hear what's going on in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay.
Hello, my name is Kevin Calm. I live at 2206 South Tucker Street. I've never done anything like this before. This is interesting to me, so I'll just be really quick. This Oxford House thing is why I'm here. I've never come to a city council meeting. I just have some questions. I know there's been Facebook comments. There's been hearsay. I've heard from this person, from this person, from this person's uncle who said this. So hopefully we're going to get some answers tonight with this Oxford House situation. My only concern, and I'm sure this is going to get brought up later, but it keeps sounding like this is for drug and alcohol recovering people, which is good. That needs to be done. However, a simple KBI search finds that there are people with sex convictions, there's people with violent convictions in these houses that we already have in Pittsburgh. And so my concern is this just for drug and alcohol recovering addiction people, or is there more to this story that we are not getting? So with that, I thank you all for your time, and I hope that we can have a good discussion on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? No? All right. We're going to close public input. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda? No. All right. Seeing none. Item A, approval of the July 12, 2022 City Commission meeting minutes. Item B, approval of ordinance number S-1085, levying a special assessment against the lots or parcels of land on which refuse matters was located, to pay the cost of making the premises safe and hygienic, and authorize the mayor to sign the ordinance on behalf of the city. Item C, approval of ordinance number S-1086, levying a special assessment against the lots or parcels of land on which a public nuisance was located, to pay the cost of abating the nuisance, and authorize the mayor to sign the ordinance on behalf of the city. Item D, approval of ordinance number S-1087, levying a special assessment against the lots or parcels of land on which existed weeds or obnoxious vegetable growth, to pay the cost of cutting or removing said growth, and authorize the mayor to sign the ordinance on behalf of the city. Item E, approval of the Traffic Advisory Board request to place stop signs at the intersections of 17th and North Grand, 17th and North Smelter, and 10th and North Miles, and authorize city staff to erect the signs. And finally, item F, approval of the appropriation ordinance for the period ending July 26, 2022, subject to the release of HUD expenditures when funds are received. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll second it.
Moved by Doc, seconded by Chuck. Roll call vote?
Brooks.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
McNay.
Yes.
Munsell.
Yes.
Sigley.
Yes.
All right, moving on to special presentations. 5-year financial forecast. City Manager Darren Hall and Finance Director Larissa Bowman will provide information regarding the city's 5-year financial forecast.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners.
Good evening, Larissa.
Okay, so earlier this year, staff presented the 5-year financial plan on working day back in May. Tonight, we would like to review that plan and ask for adoption. So we use the 5-year financial plan as a forecasting tool that assists us in developing strategies to achieve the city's goals. As we work on the plan, we use the Imagine Pittsburgh as a strategic guide as we go through that. Imagine Pittsburgh has identified 6 areas of focus. Those are housing, economic development, public wellness, communication, education, and infrastructure. So as we move forward together, the city and the community is in a very positive state of progress. Our historical financial management has put the city in an encouraging position to continue moving forward and to meet those Imagine Pittsburgh goals. So to ensure that we keep that financial stability, while we go through this 5-year plan, we want to make sure we're increasing our revenues incrementally, we're maintaining our reserve levels, we're updating our policies and procedures as we see things that we need to update, and we're monitoring and controlling our expenditures. We practice the long-term planning, and we make decisions based on data. Last year, we made the following recommendations in our working day, and I just kind of want to go review those and make sure that we kind of recap the outcomes of those. So we recommended that there would be no change to the general fund mill rate, and the action that was taken was that we approved the 2022 budget with the general fund with no mill rate increase. We also recommended that utility rates increase by 3% and stormwater rates by 1%, excuse me. In the 2022 budget, it was approved for the 3% utility rates with the 1% stormwater. As for our debt service fund, it was recommended that we maintain minimal change from that, and that was approved with the budget too. We also presented the following long-term plans: the capital improvement plan, the equipment replacement plan, and our 5-year plan, and those were all adopted by the City Commission. Last thing we did was for a compensation study for market adjustments and a 1% cost of living. The cost of living was included in the 2022 budget, along with we did a compensation study that resulted in additional market adjustments made in January of 2022.
Real quick before I start, I just want to acknowledge Larissa and her staff. They've been working on this document it usually takes about 3 or 4 months. They do an exceptional job. There's usually just a handful of people that have input on it, and even though we do it every year, it's quite a task to update it. So thanks a bunch for your hard work, and I'm not Joe Wimmer, so I don't want to pretend to be Joe Wimmer. If you remember Joe, he did this last time, but we'll see if we can't make him proud. So it all starts with revenues for the city. And a long time ago, I learned the easiest way to send a message in a meeting like this is with a chart. So here's our infamous pie chart that everybody uses. Things that jump out at you, there's 3 big pieces, and they're basically all the same size. The fourth piece is of a similar size, but it's made up of a lot of little revenues. That's a very strong message for our community. We're not relying on one revenue stream. In total, they're $37,600,000 worth of revenues. This next graph, it's just simply a way to look at how they stack up. If you can tell, the sales tax is the big red one at the bottom. After that, you've got the property tax, which is the blue, and then you trickle in with franchise, which really doesn't change much, and the public utility transfers at the top. So once again, it's a pretty balanced message. I'm going to jump in each of the taxes real quick. The property tax, 2 components to a property tax: the property valuations and the mill levy. Our net assessed valuation has remained relatively flat for the last 3 years. There's a combination of the actual assessed valuation and then tax abated properties and things like that that come on and off. But for the most part, we were down just a hair last year when you figured everything together. The good news is we're trending up, and we'll get into that in a little bit. In 2021, like I said, it decreased by 0.13%, a very minuscule amount. For 2022 through 26, we're projecting for this 5-year forecast a half-cent annual growth. We think that's, it may sound conservative, but I think it's something that's prudent. With the addition of new commercial developments like FedEx, and another thing about FedEx I should touch on, they came to town, they didn't ask for anything. They didn't ask for any tax abatements, they didn't ask for many things other than some road improvements and some assistance here and there. So that's gonna hit the tax rolls starting January of next year, and that'll be a big boost, and it'll be a way for us to recognize the growth in our community and increase taxes without adjusting the mill levy. The total net assessed valuation increase is projected to be 10% over this 5-year forecast period. Get some skipping. Okay, so this is another little dive into property tax. This kind of lays it out by year. What you got is the net valuation on the left. Interestingly enough, in 2018 to 2017, there's a $10 million increase in net valuation. That allowed us to leave the mill levy right at 37 and collect the taxes we needed for that year, and they went up about $250,000. In the 2023 submitted budget, which I'll be talking about when we're finished here, the valuation is increasing by 6.8%. Similar to what happened in 2018, when it increased by 6%. That's important to note because this growth allows us to keep the mill rate where it is, but capture that growth. And as we use that growth, it helps to offset what we're looking at right now, which is 9% inflation across the country. Small little chart at the bottom, that just shows, very confusing for a lot of people. They get one tax bill, they think it's all the city or they think it's all the county. It's actually 5 different entities together. The thing that jumps out at that should be that basically the city, the school district, and the county all have about 50 mills of that, so they basically get about a third of that. Another pie chart, the following chart shows the various property tax jurisdictions within Pittsburgh and their appropriate 2022 cost for, say, a residential property of $100,000. So simply put, if you look at the top pie chart and look at the blue square, that's the city of Pittsburgh. If you own a $100,000 house, your taxes would have been $594 for the year. If you jump below to the chart below, that's just to show you the difference between the commercial rate. If you figure the property tax for residential, it's a different calculation. It's 11.5% set by the state. There's several different categories, but the other big one is commercial, which is 25%. So that just shows you the increase in the difference there. And finally, on property taxes, this is just one more way of looking at it. Year by year, the city's mill for the last 5 years has basically been 37. We haven't adjusted it. This will be the 6th year in a row that we're not recommending increasing the mill. Now, what we also have is the city's debt service mill, and that's kind of gone between 8 and 8.5, depending on how much debt that we have at the time. And then finally is the library, which carries about 6 mills. Sales tax, I don't know what to say. There's a huge chart up there. It screams the state of Kansas has a 6.5 cents of our 9-cent sales tax goes to the state. That's about 2 cents higher than Missouri. And so when you look at the breakdown the rest of the way, the city of Pittsburgh could put a 2% sales tax on the books based on what the state allows. We only have 1.5 cents, and Crawford County has 1 cent as well. There are 5 programs funded by this dedicated sales tax. They're summarized here for ease of looking at it in another table. Public safety is a 0.5 cent, street maintenance is a 0.5 cent, and on down the line. The important thing to note is that public safety sales tax expires December 31st, 2023. That's been a 10-year tax. It's been very well received. We've done a lot of great things with it, and it's going to be important that by April of next year, we consider having something on the ballot to renew that if it's the council's wishes. I can tell you, if I'm still here, it will be the staff's recommendation that you do that, because I don't know where we go without it, quite frankly. As far as technology, equipment for the officers, and just a lot of little things that make the difference in a community like this out here. We're kind of on our own, you know. I mean, we're on the corner of the state, and we don't have Wichita or Topeka or a big police force. We're really it. So this has been a big difference for us, and we know we're going to continue to fight crime, but for police and fire, this has really helped us a lot. At the bottom, you're looking at the sales tax percentage rate. This kind of expresses what I said. The expiration of the half-cent public safety sales tax would have a huge impact on us. The 5-year reflects it renewed, but if you look at that gray area on the top of that bottom chart, that's what's unauthorized currently in the state. So if there is an emergency in Pittsburgh, if there is some project that comes up that we just have to do something, I believe we're over 2 million now for what a half-cent generates every year. We have that in our pocket, and you know, if you're running your family, it's always good to have some space on your credit card. That's basically what that is for us. It's a cushion. Online taxes have been unbelievable. It's hard to really pin down how much they've impacted our revenues. But last year we had 11.3% growth in sales tax revenue with no increase in the sales tax rate. That's unheard of, but it was kind of common across the state in particular areas. This year we're staring at another 11% as of this week, I think. Mm-hmm. Now, when we're making the 5-year forecast, we don't just put in the best revenue and highest expenditure we can. So we're being conservative, we're putting a 2% growth in for the 5 years, but it's too strong of a number not to point out. The middle chart just shows you the collection rate over time. Obviously, we had a dip during the pandemic, but we're back on track. Sales tax collections are at the bottom. Once again, the green at the top, that's the public safety sales tax amount that's generated. So if we did not renew that public safety sales tax, that $2.6 million would go away, and that's a pretty big hole to fill based on how we're currently operating. Franchise is not much to say here. Franchise taxes are basically pass-throughs. The franchises operate on our right-of-way. They pay us a fee. We collect it. It's basically a stable income for us. It remains pretty flat. Casino, the big dip there is obviously the shutdown, when they had to shut down with the pandemic. They've rebounded well. They're pretty consistent. The chart line, that black line that runs through all those ups and downs, is the trend line. They continue to trend up. We get 1% of the gaming revenues from the casino. It's about $370,000 a year. And currently, we try not to program that to a service. We just keep it in reserves because we're going to need to do things like the water treatment plant, which is a good segue into public utilities. The primary revenue source for public utilities is user fees. Very volatile and based on climate conditions, as we can all see this year. I don't know when and who stopped watering, but at some point people were watering like crazy, and then they probably gave up. But you'll see it in the water revenues and the consumption, which is this next chart. Utility revenue at the bottom with the green top just kind of shows you our trend. Important to point out, there's a 3% increase for 2023 through 2026. To put that into perspective, we're basically looking at a 9% inflation right now. So we have to keep up with inflation. And in normal times, we'd probably just benefit by having very good reserves. But as you know, the wastewater treatment plant's going to get bid in 2023. The contract's going to probably start in early 24. And my hope is that you guys agree with us that we can put as much cash as we can up front to keep those rate increases down that are going to be coming. And those reserves will be very important when we do something like that. It is also important to note that we've been fortunate to raise $9 million outside of the city through state and federal assistance. So we're doing everything we can as a staff to keep that down. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Larissa.
Okay, on to expenditures. So from this pie chart, you can see that our top three are personnel and our contractual services and capital outlay. So on our personnel, that's our salaries and our benefits. And contractual will be our property liability insurance that we have to pay annually, any professional services. And capital outlays are equipment that we purchase throughout the years in any of our projects.
Please ask us questions
Yes.
during this if you, I'm sure it's a lot of information, but don't wait till the end unless you want to.
So another useful way to view the city's expenditures is by program. So that's what this chart shows. And our first one is Public Works and Utilities at 35%, Public Safety at 25%, and Housing and Community Development at 10%. And that kind of goes along, those top three go right along with our Imagine Pittsburgh, those goals. So the next thing is the city health insurance. So we are a self-funded plan, so that's kind of, we put in our employer premiums and the employee premiums, and we pay as we go on claims. So in 2015, the city made the decision to carve out the single provider and provide different networks, and by doing so, we had our reserves at that time, you can kind of see the blue, was $168,000 in our reserves for our city health funds. And in 2021, we ended the year with 1.5 million. So it really worked out well for us, and we have not raised our premiums in 6 years for the employees.
And one reason the general fund reserves are so important on the other side is sometimes we've had a claim before that's $500,000 or $600,000. So you can imagine if you had 125,000 reserves and you're self-funded, that money's gonna have to come from somewhere. So the fact that now we've got well over $1.5 million is good protection for the taxpayers.
So on to capital improvements. So our fixed assets are assets that typically last longer than a normal business cycle. They require maintenance to keep them operating safely and effectively. And we keep our 5-year CIP plan to identify those projects. This is just kind of a list of some projects that we completed in 2021. We did the Georgia Street culvert and channel. We did the splash pad. We installed new meters, and we did some mill and overlay.
Larissa, could I ask you a
Yes.
question? Do you know off the top of your head which of these projects we got outside funding, grants, or KDOT, or?
I know the splash pad, we did receive funding for that. We did get some outside funding with, the county went on some, like on the Atkinson.
The airport parking and
Airport.
drive, I'm sure that was federally matched.
So about 3 out of, okay.
Yeah.
I just think that's an important point, that we
Yeah, yeah. A
seek
lot of these
outside
are
funding.
very, community collaboration efforts to get those completed. Okay, any questions as I move on to debt service? Okay, so on our debt, the city's current goal is for our general obligation bonds to keep that mill levy from 8 to 10. And right now, we're setting at 8. So as you can see, for our outstanding debt, our top three are our general obligation bonds, which those are backed by property taxes. Then our number 2 is our special assessment bond, which is backed by the casino. And the third one is our utility general obligation bonds, and that is a revenue bond because it's backed by the utilities. Is there any questions on the bond part? You know, that kind of gets.
I think it's important that the public know that the state would allow us to go up to $42 million if we so chose. We've chosen, or the past and now, we've chosen to try to keep that down as much as possible, the funds.
Yes.
But we could, if we had to, go up to 42 million.
Yes, that's a great segue to this next chart. So the black line is where we have the authority to go for our debt, and the red is where we currently are.
So it's more than 42.
Yes, yeah. And then this chart is kind of, we call it our waterfall chart, just shows when that debt would fall off. And so it goes all the way out to 2035 currently. And then I'll move into reserves if there's no questions on any of that. So for the Government Finance Officers Association, they recommend we keep our reserve levels at 16% of revenues or 2 months of expenditures. And here at the city, we do the 2 months of expenditures is how we like to keep that. And so for our general fund, we are, at the end of 2018, you can see in this graph, was the first year we actually hit that black line is where we should be for our 16%. And 2018 was the first year we hit that, and we've kind of continued to get there. We hit that 16%. The growing reserves in the last 3 years has placed the city in a better position, and we've taken advantage of economic development opportunities from that, and it also can support the city's workforce through wage and staff increases. So it's really put us in a really good position by allowing us to do that.
And keep in mind, you can see the trend on the left side, the green is going up. Back in 2012, valuation in this county went down 10 million, or excuse me, 2008. So it took us from 2008, first couple of years we burnt through our reserves, and it took us all the way to 2019 to get back just to the minimum. So while it looks like, well, heck, we've got all this green above the minimum line, it doesn't take long for it to go away. And that's why it's critical that we maintain a reasonable amount.
That 16% is only 2 months of expenditures, so keep that kind of in mind.
And that's an industry standard
Yes.
or by statute or just?
Just industry
best practice?
standard.
Okay.
Okay, so this is kind of the same chart for public utilities. The black line is where the 16% is. And you can see, I mean, we've got the high reserves in that one also as we are getting ready to build a wastewater treatment plant, so. Okay, and then at the bottom, we have the citywide restricted and the unrestricted reserve. So in the green, those are unrestricted reserves, and the red are restricted. So restricted means that we're not able to use those on just anything. They're dedicated sources of reserve. So for example, our public safety sales tax, that reserve is dedicated to that program. Also, the street sales tax is the same, and our sales tax capital outlay for those.
And our economic development sales
Yes.
tax. So all those are just earmarked, they can only be used for what they're used for. So it's important to show you the difference. The green's what we could use for anything, while the red's there, it makes that chart really high. It's all tied to something, so. Okay, so let's wrap it up. We'll bring it home. Not unlike our local businesses, the city's feeling the impact of rising commodity prices, which we all know about, and definitely a tight labor market. Revenue sources to the general fund, such as sales tax, are keeping pace, which we're very fortunate to have. The city is trying to keep operations under control, but it's very difficult when your town is growing as fast and as big as it's getting to not add people. We try to use technology whenever we can to meet our needs, but with the blessing of this commission a few months ago, we added a parks maintenance person, we added a street maintenance person, we added somebody over in the water utility, and we added another building inspector. I mean, it's just necessary that sometimes we add expenses. Effective financial management has put the city's reserves, as Larissa alluded to, in a very good position, which can mitigate a number of uncontrollable factors such as the extreme weather, rising cost of health insurance, utility increases, and other unforeseen operating costs. Once again, the utility and the general fund operating expenses have gone up 9%. That's the gas, that's the insurance, that's the people. That's a big number to overcome. During 2021 legislative session, the tax lid was removed. I don't want to get into that too much, other than mention that it enacted Senate Bill 13. This legislation establishes a new notice and public hearing requirement if our proposed budget will exceed the property tax levy's revenue neutral rate. The revenue neutral rate is the mill rate that we talked about, the 51, that would generate the same property tax revenue as was levied the previous year. So in our case, as the assessed value went up, they're demanding that in order to not have a hearing, we have to lower our mill rate. Well, that's completely backwards for us growing our community. The whole reason that we're putting in all this effort is we're trying to create that model where our community grows, the people in the community have more valuable things, the valuation of the community goes up. You do have to pay higher taxes on the more stuff that you own and the higher value of it, but we leave the mill rate the same, and that allows us over time to keep up with the rising cost of doing business. So we're pretty comfortable with that. That hearing will be in September, along with the regular budget hearing. It'll be the first time that we have that hearing, but I do want to bring up the point that in 2018, we went through that exact scenario. This isn't something new. 2018, valuation went up, the assessed valuation went up, and we recognized those revenues, and that's what has allowed us to keep that mill rate the same for those 6 or 7 years. So it's important, but it's it can be confusing, and there will be a second hearing to address specifically that in September. And there will be a postcard that goes out explaining what the increase is for everyone. So based on our projections of revenues, expenditures, our historical data, and other known factors, we prepared this plan with the following assumptions. Sales tax revenue, a 2% growth for the years 2022 through 2026, using the prior year's level as a base. Assessed valuation is projected to increase 10% over the 5 years. Gaming revenue, as I mentioned, will continue to be about $370,000. We really have no, I mean, that's like asking how much Casey's is going to bring in. I mean, we don't operate the casino, but we are fortunate to get the 1%, and the trend line is that $370,000 is a pretty good number to base a budget off of. Utility rate increases of 3% annually for 2023 through 2026 to, of course, keep up with the rising cost of operating the plants, as well as beginning to replace the new wastewater plant. All other revenues are projected flat. That includes court fees, fines, those kind of things, park fees. Retirement costs will continue to rise in years 2022 through 2026 with a 0.2% capers and a 0.25 Kansas Police and Fire annually. Work comp insurance will continue to increase at a rate of 3%, as it usually has in contractual and commodities. Expenses are projected to increase at 2% annually for the 4-year period, but inflation is currently at 9%, so this will definitely look a little different next year. Considerations to bring it home. We've adjusted revenues based on historical and current trends as best we could. We monitor and control our expenditures. Obviously, Larissa's bi-monthly report is a good example of that. That's not a state-required report. That's just something we give you so we know every 2 months where we stand. We maintain a structurally balanced budget, which is critical. What that really means to anybody at home is that we don't pay expenses out of reserves unless they're an emergency. Maintain minimum reserve levels for the same reason. Continue to practice long-term planning, which is what this document is. And we're going to make data-driven decisions whenever we can. And we're going to provide programs and services guided by the Imagine Pittsburgh goals. So our recommendations in this 5-year forecast are a 2% COLA in years 2023 through 2026, an additional 2% merit increase for the employees in 2023 and 2025, minimal changes to the debt service fund mill rate, meaning as we finish projects and pay off their debt, that's the only time that we'll add new projects on, and increase the utility rates by 3% annually. Thanks for your guidance as we prepared this forecast, and this is the second time you've put up with us presenting it to you, so you all look somewhat interested, so thank you. But today was really about letting the citizens hear it. It's their budget, and they're the ones that are making all the sacrifices with their money to pay the taxes and hopefully benefiting from all the services. Once again, Larissa and her team have been outstanding, as they always are, and we'd be happy to answer any questions or hear any comments.
I have a question. The work compensation insurance, does that come out of the contractual services slice of the pie, or is that under personnel?
Contractual.
On capital outlay, I was trying to find out the piece of the pie on expenditures. I'm sorry, like for equipment. Just using the sales tax, you mentioned the public safety sales tax. If we bought a new fire truck or replaced patrol vehicles, is that bought with the sales tax, or does that come out of the capital outlay?
It's public safety sales tax.
Okay, but so it's not part of that piece of the pie of the,
It would still be considered a capital outlay,
okay.
but it's, the
But
funding
the
comes from
funding, the
public.
funding is from the sales
Yes.
tax? Okay,
The public safety sales tax that we passed 9 years ago now had one fire truck in it. It replaced one of the big Quints. It was a $700,000, $800,000 big expensive truck. The idea, I believe, would be if we did it again. Now, there's other fire purchases that do not come out of the public safety sales tax, including some smaller vehicles. But if we did renew it for another 10 years, I'm pretty sure we are at a point where, we've got 20, 23 years on one of those trucks. One of them's right now out of service. So we'd probably be making another request like that, but that's definitely a capital outlay item. But it's a big one.
Where are we in personnel? Where are our holes in personnel right now?
Well, they're where we would guess they would be. They're kind of where everybody else's are, we could tell. We obviously struggle. Matt's Matt's got his hands full with streets and utilities. You know, those folks work outside. It's difficult to do. There's a lot of jobs right now that are in the air conditioning that pay similar. Those trade jobs where you're out there working with your hands can be tough. Obviously, the police department, we've addressed their incoming salary and some of their retention needs at the lower level and the hard-to-fill positions. But dispatchers, always, you know, some of the dispatchers we have, they work for a week and they're gone. So dispatch and police for sure. Fire's been holding tough all year, but they're looking at a couple of vacancies right now as well. And across the board, administratively, I think we've been pretty good. You know, we lost our deputy finance director, but really it's the, you know, it's the outside, the labor, the police officer, the places, all my peers around the country, we talk about it. Those are just difficult positions to fill. Whether you're CDL, manufacturing, just in general, is tough to get folks, but it's not one place, Commissioner. It's really, but we do. I really think we're doing a pretty good job. I do think we've got our hands full on a couple areas that just nationally are just going to be hard to overcome some things. But I'll give a lot of credit to the HR department and the department heads. They're always kind of coming up with new ways, putting out videos, talking to people. Word of mouth's a big deal. We don't ever want to steal anybody's employees, but in a small community. But it's about getting good people right now and training them to do the work versus you used to have 25 people. I think the chief said when he applied, there was 40, 50 officers or people applied to be an officer back in the day. So it's just changed drastically in the last few years.
Thank you.
Now, thank you all.
Thank you.
Great job.
Yes, very good job.
I think I'm stuck up here for one more reading.
All right. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks.
All right. Presentation of the city manager's submitted 2023 budget. City manager Darren Hall and director of finance Larissa Bowman will present the city manager's submitted budget for 2023.
I think Larissa would prefer that we adopted the 5-year financial forecast, if you
Oh.
don't mind.
Okay,
We don't have to. It's not I mean, it's more of a courtesy, but I think it's important enough that.
all right.
I'd move to approve.
Motion by Don,
Second.
second by Stu. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Larissa's happy. We
Put a
can.
stamp on our work.
Yes.
Okay, well, here we go. The budget calendar, just so you know. Nope, I flipped too fast.
Page 3.
Page 3 of your 200-page book. So we're about halfway through this process. July 26th, the recap of the adoption of the 5-year financial plan, which we just accomplished. I'll present the submitted budget here in about 2 minutes. We're looking at publishing that budget and setting the hearing notice after today's meeting. We would prefer on August 9th if everybody would be prepared to come in with their questions on the budget. So whether you meet with your constituents, I definitely encourage you to come in and meet with me and the staff if you have any questions. That's the day that we'd really like to knock them out in the public meeting. Because of the schedule and some of the new things that the legislature's asked us to do, we will be holding those 2 hearings, the revenue neutral rate and the budget hearing, both on September 13th. And then on the 14th, Larissa will send it back over to the county clerk to be certified. And on sometime in November, probably the 22nd, we'll ask you to consider and adopt the capital improvements plan, which is the 5-year plan for capital improvements. So with that said, I tried to think of a better way to do this every year, but there's so much in it, I'm just going to go ahead and read the 2-page budget message. Honorable Mayor and Commission, I present the budget for 2023 for your consideration. This document was created with input from the City Commission and a focus on the Imagine Pittsburgh strategic plan, which outlines our city's needs in the area of housing, economic development, infrastructure, public wellness, education, and communication. Additionally, we are focused on the City Commission's goals of maintaining our adequate reserves and effectively managing our debt, both very important. While our community continues to grow, it is happening at a time of high inflation. We are thankful and celebrate our economic development successes. The Federal Express Distribution Center, numerous manufacturing expansions, and a continued growth by our commercial and retail partners continues to provide new jobs and opportunities for all of us, which is our overriding goal, a high quality of life. However, this growth comes with the need to increase our service levels. The number of city employees in the submitted budget is increased by 4 over last year's adopted budget, and I outlined those 4 positions earlier. They're basic services as far as we're considered. Those are services that everybody in this community can use. They affect all of us, and we need to be reasonable with the employees we have and make sure that they have enough partners in those ditches and on those streets and answering those phones, that it creates a quality job for them and they don't get burnt out. So thank you for those positions. Fortunately, since the growth has provided additional revenue, we are also able to meet this need while maintaining a structural balance, which is really key to the financial health of this city. Like most businesses today, the cost and availability of labor are as challenging as well. We just touched on it, Dr. Sibley brought it up. Our employees are our most valuable resource at the city. Outside of all the equipment, all the money, we're an organization that does work through our people, and so we have to take care of our people. It's tough to hire and retain quality people, and although we implemented a new pay plan at the beginning of 2022, and it wasn't cheap, as you know, we focused on hiring and retaining entry-level and difficult-to-fill positions. It is truly daunting to keep our pay commensurate with inflation, with the latest reports putting that at 9% over this time last year. The 2023 submitted budget contains that 2% cost of living adjustment and the 2% merit for all full-time employees. We've also enhanced our recruiting and retention efforts, as I mentioned earlier. In addition to labor, everything that we use is more expensive. Workers' compensation insurance, property and liability insurance, electricity, natural gas, vehicle fuel are all expected to increase by at least 3%. We all know fuel's coming down. We're in the 7th month. So I'm pretty sure Larissa's budget for the current year didn't have fuel prices at $4.70. So we're going to see that, but we're going to manage through it. And we will continue to look for ways to manage these costs without cutting services, which is critical. While the national trend is for employer-provided health insurance expenses to significantly increase annually like everything else, the 2023 submitted budget contains no increase in employer or employee contributions to the city's health insurance plan for an amazing 6th year in a row. Our staff continues to work with providers to maintain and enhance benefits without increasing costs to employees or the taxpayers. The best solution for addressing the rising costs is a strong local economy, and fortunately, we have that. The city's 2022 net assessed valuation, which is used to support this upcoming budget, increased by that 6.59% we mentioned earlier. With no additional debt plan, the 2023 submitted budget recommends no mill levy rate increase. The increase in valuation will offset a portion of the rising operating costs, so despite the historically high inflation, we will not need to cut services for the upcoming year. Our sales tax revenue collections continue to grow. In 2021, they were up 11%, as I mentioned. So far in 2022, they're up 11 again. That's 22% increase in 18 months. We don't know where it will stop, but I'm assuming this is somewhat a new baseline since it's just continuing month after month. Some of that is indeed online purchases, so hopefully it's permanent. Not that people are buying online, but it's a permanent part of the revenue stream. I don't want any brick and mortar businesses to come after me for saying that. So the city receives 1% of the gaming revenues. We touched on that earlier. The budget also includes 3% increase in water and wastewater. We touched on that. It's just critical to say it one more time. The cost, the chemicals, the demands on those plants for treating our water and our wastewater are incredible. The equipment that we need to do our stormwater work, we can't do it without those things, and all of those things are in high demand and they're all very expensive. And the plant that we thought was $40 million, it may be $48 or $49 million at this point. So increase in those rates, 3%, I don't think it's an unbelievable amount. Nobody likes a tax increase. We all pay the same thing, but it's imperative that we keep up with the costs. In conclusion, the 2023 budget reflects the city's effort to address growth while controlling costs. Pittsburgh's economy is strong, and as a result, we will continue to invest in our workforce, our infrastructure, and all of our businesses. The 2023 budget provides a service level which will continue to improve the quality of life for all, while accommodating the growth that shows no sign of stopping. Thanks for your consideration of this budget today, and be happy to answer any questions today or any time between the 9th. And thanks for your help in putting this together.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So Darren, what are you hearing from your peers in terms of economic growth? Are we an anomaly?
Well, I hear a few things in the state of Kansas. I know Finney County is growing. That's out where Garden City is, around Ford County. And Finney, they're out in the south, the way west. But they have a city called Holcomb that's near them. Holcomb has a school district. We have a school district. There's about I don't know how many hundreds and probably 1,500 school districts. According to Superintendent Rich Profit, 2 school districts are growing right now in Kansas, Pittsburgh's and Holcomb's. So that says a little bit about it right there. Obviously, it's hard to compare with a $4 billion, 4,000 job battery plant in DeSoto, but more power to them. That's good for all of us in Kansas. But I'm pretty sure the people I talk to, the one question I get all the time is, what are you guys doing in Pittsburgh? Why is Pittsburgh growing? I've asked our experts, I've asked our team members. I used to lean on the Economic Development Advisory Committee and the revolving loan fund and that sales tax that generates assistance for people that want to grow their businesses is the difference in Pittsburgh. But I think we're way beyond that at this point. I think we have a unique balance of university, commercial, manufacturing, and entrepreneurism that's just created an environment where people here just do. They reinvest, whatever business it is. We've got the $530 million capital slide that we use to track our progress, but across the board, we're just growing. And I think it's a lot of it's due to the people in this community. I don't think you could pick one thing, but I know it's unique. Every data point that we look at, Pittsburgh's special. We're in the middle of the tax burden, but we're at the top of places people want to live. We're at the top of places people want to retire. We're at the top of most inexpensive places to live in America, small towns. Our school districts are becoming higher and higher as far as ratings, what our kids can achieve. So we are unique. And a long answer to your question is Pittsburgh is definitely experiencing something that is not being experienced in a lot of other areas. And I think it's just all of them, the education, the university, everybody, the businesses, it's amazing. But it's unique. Some of the problems, staff, nobody can get staff. I don't care where you are, what you do. It's tough right now, but I think that may start changing as well, and we're going to keep working on it.
Good question. All right, do we need to accept, do we have a motion to accept?
You only accept the adopted budget when you adopt it
Okay.
later. So this is
So
just,
it's received for file then?
yeah.
All right.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you guys so much. That was a lot of information, a lot of good information.
A lot of hard work.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move on to non-agenda reports and requests. Does anyone have anything? Darren?
I think Matt had real quick, I know the room's full. They did a heck of a job on the bulky item. Can he just maybe recap? a few
Absolutely.
numbers real quick? I mean, last year it rained 8 inches on them, and this time it was 1,000 degrees, so I think they deserve a shout.
Yeah, so last Monday, we partnered with, our stormwater crew partnered with Parks and Rec crew. We sent out, three crews, 3 backhoes with a couple dump trucks each. We picked up all around the city. We had about 128 registered users, mattresses, box springs, furniture. We filled about 8 30-yard dumpsters. So we set them around and moved through, and I think we missed 1 or 2 here, but next day or 2 we got them all. I think we got everything taken care of. So yeah, no, the guys did a great job. The crews, like I said, it was a good partnership, and thanks to Parks and Rec and the Stormwater Department, and knocked it out.
Be sure and thank them for
Thank
their
you.
dedication.
Do you think you picked up more or less stuff than last year? Or?
You know, we didn't do tires and we didn't do white goods,
Oh.
but it was still a pretty good run.
Yeah.
You know, 8 dumpsters. I mean, those are smashed dumpsters. So, yeah,
Lot of stuff.
it was a good run. So,
Thank you.
Yes. All right.
Leanne?
Now I'd like to introduce Leanne Larson. She is the Executive Director of Friends of Recovery. She's here tonight. I called her and I asked her, I had got her number from Casey Brown with Catholic Charities and Homeless Prevention, and she was so gracious to talk to me on the phone. I told her we needed some credible information, and thank you for coming all the way from Overland Park.
Yes,
Yes, and we're glad to have you.
I almost feel like I should turn around.
Oh,
but,
that's no problem. Just
I have some information to hand out if it tells a little bit about us, my contact information, things like that. Maybe I could get helper.
sure.
Okay, great. Yes, perfect. So that just tells a little bit more about Friends of Recovery, which is the advocacy agency for the Kansas Oxford houses. And then it also has a national profile, which is kind of good information. I will say that the last 5 or 6 times I've crunched numbers and compared it to the national profile, Kansas comes out just a little bit better. So that's always nice to hear.
Sure. For starters,
Yes.
this is an Oxford house
Yes,
at 2404 South Homer.
2404 South Homer.
Yes.
Yes, it will be. They have the key, they're gonna move in, I believe was projected for the 1st of August. So.
Could, you may get to this, but maybe explain what an Oxford house is.
So an Oxford house is, it's a clean and sober living for people in recovery from drugs or alcohol. There's a good little snippet of what we do. It's a concept, it's a democratically run, self-supporting, drug-free home. An Oxford house can range from 6 to 15 people. There's houses for men, women with children, men with children. They found that the co-ed thing doesn't work, so it's either one or the other. And each house is a remarkably effective and low-cost method of preventing relapse. And so preventing relapse was the first purpose of Oxford House, which started in 1975 in Silver Spring, Maryland. And it's replicated in each house today. So, but Friends of Recovery advocates for the people in the houses. We help find the houses to rent, things like that. Connect them with community agencies in the community. And we document demographics, things like that.
Right, so you don't own the house.
We don't own the
You're
house,
renting
we
it.
rent them all.
Okay.
We have 157 houses in Kansas as of now. If you wait, August 15th, we'll have 3 more. So we're really growing. We got quite a bit of a grant from the state of Kansas with CARES funding, because they have noticed that the pandemic kind of kicked off even more drug and alcohol issues in people. If they were maintaining before the act of not going to work, or their schedule disruptions, or not having the human interaction, so that's up about 30%. The new drug and alcohol cases or treatment or things like that. So,
Excuse me, who actually owns these
Yeah.
houses?
that particular individual is an individual, he has owned Oxford houses all across the country. And then one of the groups recently bought him out, and he had money to invest. And so he bought a house in Manhattan, Kansas, and one down here in Pittsburgh.
So, as I gather, he owns the house, so who's paying him for the rent of the house?
So the members that live in the house pay him. It's a normal rental contract, and it's done in the house name, and so those members will all put money into it's a weekly equal expense share, and that money will pay the rent, the bills, cable, things like that. And then, they'll also house supplies, cleaning supplies, things like that.
So,
How many people will reside at this house?
In that house, I believe 8.
And
Oh,
what,
I'm sorry? 9, okay.
are they male or female?
That one would be male.
Male? Will any of them, be on parole or probation for any crimes that they've
It's
committed?
possible, probable. In all likelihood, at least one of them would probably be on probation.
So we don't know.
There's a,
for a
It's-
drug-related issue?
not all, people in recovery from drugs or alcohol have drug
I know,
crimes,
I was just asking.
it could be that, it could be, maybe it was a theft or to pay for the drugs.
Something related, yeah. So the Oxford House organization provides the structure, the counseling, things like that to ensure success of these individuals?
It's kind of it's a peer-to-peer, so it's 24/7, peer-to-peer. It's not staffed by an individual, so you get the 24/7 peer support. You know, somebody down the hall has been there, done that. Know somebody who's gone through it. If somebody's struggling with something, I mean, so you could always knock on somebody's door and
In the
get some
house,
advice and work through any.
So is there any education that's provided to these individuals prior to coming to the house?
Like Friends of Recovery does a monthly new member orientation with the new members of the houses. We do like a state convention, we do training throughout the year, things like that.
How does somebody come to be a candidate for an Oxford House?
They had a willingness for recovery.
Are there disqualifiers?
You know, like people who have arson charges. You know, nobody wants to live with somebody who likes to set fire to things. It's not a flat across the board because I would normally say the sex offenders. In this one instance, in this case with the gentleman in the house, that's like the mother of his children. They're still together. I had a few more notes written down about that one. The mother of his children. The ages, it was very Romeo and Juliet.
Are we talking about an individual that's gonna be in the house?
No, not that one.
Yeah, you lost me.
To kind of reference
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
okay.
let's just, yeah, focus.
just kind of tied that.
Right.
To
So are
that.
there, how do you measure that they're maintaining their sobriety?
You can do a house drop, a UA at any time. And a UA is a courtesy. A lot of times they can kind of tell if somebody's drunk or high.
Who does the UA?
Anybody in the house can UA.
So how's the Friends of Recovery connection with Oxford House, connection with the UA? Like, do you guys do that?
No, the house does a UA.
It's
Like,
its own.
yeah. And that's at any time. I mean, you can do one member, you can do a whole house. And a UA is a courtesy too. If the person's obviously drunk or high, they're gone. They have an hour to get their stuff. It's a zero tolerance. Yeah,
So,
Who enforces that?
the house.
So people live in it, but there's no one above them.
There's layers of accountability. So like each house belongs to a chapter and each chapter belongs to the state association. And the state, they're all under the Oxford Inc. and the World Council, things like that. So Friends of Recovery can assist in anywhere in that. If there's ever any issues, feel free to call me. I'm gonna jump to her first.
So there's no supervisor on site?
Not staffed per se.
That's what I meant.
It's a, but there's people who've been in recovery for a year or two, the seasoned members that stick around and help.
So that's the peer-to-peer, you
Yeah.
have people that
Correct.
have been through it and understand and they can, yeah.
Been there, done that.
How do they recommend, I mean, is that court ordered? or is it voluntary?
No, it's voluntary. They'll fill out, if somebody wanted to live in an Oxford house, they'd fill out an application and go through an interviewing process.
So, do all of them that live there have jobs?
Most of them do. On that profile, national profile sheet, it says, residents working was 83%. The numbers that I've kind of found, at the state of Kansas is closer to 90.
So, you said that, who does the UAs?
Anybody in the house can ask anybody for a UA at any time.
So if they don't pass the UA, I heard you say they're out of the house?
They have an hour.
Where they go?
So there's no one really in charge, but they, like you said, they're all looking out after each other to try to
Yeah.
keep each other in tow.
With the layers, like, okay, so there's, there'll be 5 houses in Pittsburgh, and so there's a chapter. So chapter is, the more seasoned members that have been there, that help guide the houses, things like that. There is, an outreach worker that comes down and helps and assists with opening new houses, chapter meetings, things like that.
Please,
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just to clarify, because I just don't understand. So we have an Oxford house, and TA, you may help with this, I don't know. Our state statute that I was given, and I'm assuming this is for group homes and Oxford House is a group home, specifically says, no person shall be eligible for placement that's on parole or on probation for a felony. Now, you just said some of these people, you said they may be convicted felons that have done their time.
Right.
Or are you saying, is that accurate? Just,
Yeah, so,
can you
You wanna stand
clarify?
up?
Can you,
Come up to the
if you
podium.
can come up to the mic, it'll help the people at home.
please tell us who you are too.
Oh,
I'm Tia Brungar. I'm the parole supervisor of the Pittsburgh unit. We cover all of southeast Kansas. And the people that come to us, the people that we supervise, have done prison time or have satisfied the prison portion of their sentence. And so now they're on post-release supervision with us. So they do not have any what we would call like active felonies. They've served their time for that. They're serving out the remainder of their post-sentence release, PSR. So,
is that another term for parole? Or
Say again?
Is that another term for parole? Or
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
and then we also have, we supervise ICOTS offenders, which are offenders from other states. And so they could technically be on probation, but parole supervises them in Kansas.
So they could live in that house?
Yep, and we do have members in that house right now.
But like Darren said, the state statute says those on parole or probation can't live in a group home?
Is that, I mean, can you classify the difference between what a group home is compared to an Oxford
Yeah, we don't
house or a
fall
halfway
under
house?
the group home.
You don't fall under the group home.
No, because, the ADA recognizes that people in recovery, let me find the exact wording of it.
If you could step to the mic, because we have people, watching.
Let me
from
find
home.
the exact wording of it. I don't want to misquote it.
So am I to understand there are already Oxford houses in Pittsburgh?
Yes,
And they've been, what's the oldest one?
Monarch, Oxford House Monarch,
How long has it been in Pittsburgh?
2017.
Okay.
Have you had any problems with any of the houses at all? As far as,
There's been like a water issue in one of the houses where the basement floods.
no, I meant with the
With the,
With,
the renters.
no, I mean. I
Success
haven't-
rate, you feel like your success
Our
rate is?
success rate is still above the national average. We're running state, I mean, I could crunch some Pittsburgh numbers for you guys if you'd like, but as a state, we run closer to that 90% success rate, so.
I've been with the Kansas Department of Corrections for almost 8 years now, and I've never seen an Oxford house fail. Where one person starts using and then the whole house uses. That has never been the case. I've never seen that. And I've worked in Wichita in parole and in southeast Kansas in parole.
So, I know we all have, as commissioners, heard from residents, and they're all gonna be here and speak up. but their main concerns are safety, property valuation going down. So, and I'm just hearing you say that some other states, people on probation or parole could go to this house? And I'm still confused because the statute, what makes that okay? And the statute says, no, anybody on probation or parole cannot be in a group home.
So a group home to me would be something that's like state ran, gets funded like that, and this is
Staffed.
not, yeah, it's staffed, it's not like that at
And
all.
licensed from the state.
Yeah, and they don't
That's
have
what the
license.
statute, the biggest question going on right now is we're being asked about something we don't know a lot about. So we're obviously trying to respond with where you get your authority other than this citizen sold his house to somebody and they're just gonna open it up for rentals for people that are doing a very noble cause, which is rehabilitating people with addiction. But, for us, we have, for starters, that house, nobody's living in that house August 1st in Pittsburgh. That house has mold from one end to the other and it's missing a garage door, and that's because of a water leak, because I know several realtors that have been through it. So we're very concerned just about, in general, the program's fantastic and we love it, but nobody seems to know anything about where the authority comes from to have it and what role the city can have in to our citizens that live over there. I guarantee you the crime thing and a house failing is not gonna happen because the police department, the codes department won't allow it to happen. But as far as the rest of it, I mean, we always get into property values. I don't know any appraiser that's ever looked at more than square foot and the comps in the area, but over time, you could see if people are moving out and selling their house on cheap, it could happen. We don't really need to talk about that today. What we need to know today is what's the authority for it to operate and who is the person that owns it, so we have somebody to go to. The one thing that keeps Pittsburgh moving is everybody's accountable for something. So if there's nobody accountable for this, it's gonna be a problem, and it's gonna be a problem for the city, which means it's gonna be a problem for the owner, and we're just trying to get through that today and help everybody understand that there is somebody accountable, we know how to get a hold of them, and it's not just gonna be left to, well, it's a great program, and God bless you all for doing it, because I definitely feel that way.
And I can get his name and get it
That'd
to
be
the
really
city.
helpful.
I just don't have that information.
I do. I have it.
You have it, okay.
So if this isn't considered a group home, is this any different than someone owning a house and having 8 people rent from them, like we have all over town?
It's the same thing, pretty much, and we got the special, or not special, but we're considered, a protected class under the ADA to be considered just like that, so we're not discriminated against.
So is there,
There's the typical landlord-tenant law, where you have to have 30 days or an eviction process, that's where it doesn't apply.
Okay, because.
Because if
of
they
the-
drink or use,
They're out.
they're gone.
So
Because
is-
they have to have consequences.
is there a difference between halfway house and Oxford House?
Yes, because the halfway house is usually staffed, whether it be a house mom or somebody who's there to work on the grounds or cook dinner for everybody. And this one it's just a group of people in recovery that rent the house, pay the bills, just keep plugging away doing the next right thing.
Committed to,
So how long do they stay in this home?
An average stay in an Oxford house, if they stay 18 months, they have, in 5 years, they have an 87% chance of still being clean and sober. So the women usually tend to stay a little bit less than that. They're more like a year. The guys, the average is more on the 18 months.
But I think I read on the website, the Oxford House website, there is no limitation on how long they can stay.
Correct. In Kansas City, we had somebody who lived in one of the houses for 14 years. Yeah. it
Going
was-
back to what Darren was talking about as far as codes and mold and the garage door and that,
Yes,
the owner of the house, he would need to come to the city for like a permit
Well, he would
or,
need to go through a closing process and have it inspected and have all that. I mean, it's just a norm, he just bought the house, right?
right. And so,
I'm just saying, I don't wanna give everybody a heart attack.
we were going,
August
some,
1st, everybody's coming. 'cause-
Yeah.
somebody else was reading through, or the disclosure of the sale and whatnot to find out if anything was flagged like
Part of the
that.
sale process.
Right.
Yeah. And so
Was it inspected before it sold?
I believe so. I mean, I can't guarantee that because I'm not 100%.
But it could be sold as is, and the owner would have had to
He'd
do
have
the
to be
necessary
responsible.
The city would
repairs.
still issue a certificate of occupancy, correct?
Yeah, well, what we're not gonna accomplish tonight is,
Yeah.
we need to just meet with the owner.
Yeah.
and-
Sure.
And promise the citizens that are here.
So,
we're not gonna
yes.
let the
Yeah,
house-
and he actually works in mold remediation, so it's almost like, oh, perfect. He can just
Maybe that's why he was in.
send a crew up here and get it done.
Gonna practice.
So possibly tomorrow, we could call and get a hold of him
Mm-hmm.
and ask the intentions and see what was needed.
Do you have his phone number?
I do.
Okay.
So there's work to be done from the city staff perspective. There's work to be
Yeah.
done from the new property owners. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we can assure the citizens that are here that are very concerned, and rightfully so, with something new coming into their neighborhood, that we'll do everything we can to get to the bottom of all these questions.
Well, and I don't want anybody in there, and if the house is all moldy, you know what I mean? Like, that definitely needs to be
Can I
fixed
ask-
before.
The worst question that you're gonna hear
Sure.
tonight, but if it doesn't get asked, I don't feel like we're gonna
Okay.
serve the purpose here. Is there any way to stop this from happening?
Not really.
Is there, we've been through statute, and I'm not saying I wanna stop it.
Right.
I totally get what you're
There's-
saying. I'm just saying the question's gonna be, the question I'm getting asked repeatedly to where I can't sit down is, what are we gonna do about it? And I'm like, I'm not sure that, A, what the will of the commission is about anything, but I don't even know if we have anything we could do.
Yeah, there's been a few court cases, and the Oxford House has won those court cases. I believe I sent
Yeah.
Yeah.
you those.
Can you
cases.
kind of verbally
Um,
summarize what you know?
Yeah, there's, I believe it's City of Edmonds,
Yep.
against the Oxford House, and they're like, nope, not here. And, it went up quite a ways, and, it was ruled that, you know, that's where there's no, you can't discriminate, against people in recovery.
It's a housing discrimination
Yeah,
issue is what it
it's
is,
a-
and it's
yeah.
not gonna hold up.
And then the Americans with Disabilities Act, people in recovery, just in recovery from drugs or alcohol, not the ones that are still out in active addiction, but in recovery is a protected class through the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Does the gentleman that owns this one own the other ones in town?
No.
I don't want, I don't think we ought to be kicking.
You wanna
names.
stand?
No, I don't think we,
Yes, it has to be up to code, the residents in the house have to be, doing the right thing, like they can't leave the trash cans out and it be all messy, and they can't like park all wonky, and they have to follow all the laws.
But rental properties.
They're not exempt
they
from our
don't.
local.
No, yeah,
No.
I understand they pay $28 a day to live for the food. Is that correct?
no, they,
yeah, she needs to talk about it.
I'm sorry, they live,
The question was, real quick, the question was, they pay $28 a day for food?
yeah, and that's not how it works.
So, I'm sorry, we'll repeat the question. If you could face us
Okay.
and the
Yeah,
mic, that would be
we'll have
helpful.
it.
Okay.
And we'll make sure everyone's questions are answered.
Okay, perfect. It's an equal expense share, so food doesn't come into it. It's the rent, utilities, house supplies, things like that. That's what that's what they're paying into. That's not to say that the houses don't get together every now and then and have a meal together as a family, but they're responsible for their own food, personal items, things like that.
So, how many's living there, will live there?
9.
9.
Okay.
And do they all drive, or how do they get around?
It varies. Usually,
So you don't know what they're gonna do, the ones that's gonna live there?
I can tell you averages of other houses. It's usually somewhere in between like 60% of them, 60 to 75% of them drive.
Yeah, I was gonna say the parking.
So, that's the average. I think in Pittsburgh, though, it runs a little lower, doesn't it? Yeah, there's, not quite as many people with vehicles in the houses in Pittsburgh, so,
You probably figure about 4 cars in the driveway.
A lot of our
Okay.
transportation needs is met by the pack bus, which we're down the street from the mall.
Yep.
You wanna
And then
stand
we-
up?
And when we get, you know, in order to get,
Start over.
in order to get to appointments on time, you have to leave a little bit early, walk down to the mall. There's 2 pickup sites, one at the mall door and one at Ron's. And the pack bus, gets us around the community and places that we need to go sometime. I mean, if you have a strong desire to work or to take care of your business, you either walk or ride a bicycle. I mean, and that's what it's not, I mean, we hold each other accountable. We look out for each other. And, you know, I've been in Pittsburgh 25 years, dealt with homelessness maybe the last 4 or 5 years. And so after my amputation, I come back, you know what I'm saying? Oxford has given me the opportunity to reestablish my life, to bring me back into a part of the community that I entered in on. You know, is like I said, it's giving me great opportunity because it makes me wonder, if Oxford wasn't on this house, would there be any confrontation or any resistance with the house being sold? I mean, if say 8 people just moved into the house and Oxford was not on it, would there be any resistance? Would we be here now?
8 people couldn't live in the house. Yes,
sir.
It's not zoned for that.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
What,
Yes, sir.
it's as a family unit, so.
Yes, sir.
You got a fellow in the back who keeps raising his hand.
Yes.
Stand up and come up.
Kind of piggyback off what he just said is, it's not zoned for 8 people to live in a house. So, going back to what she said a bit ago, it's, to get it like you're renting an apartment, is that what this is? Does it need to be rezoned for that? Does it need any kind of a statute? And then, I commend, like you're talking about, looking after each other, but my concern, and I'm pretty sure that anybody in here, especially where children is, what is keeping, who is keeping the house accountable outside of self-awareness, I guess?
The individuals that live in the house, we keep each other accountable.
And they're also.
That's basically where the core of it starts. And then we have our chapter. If the chapter sees an issue going on within the house, chapter comes into the house, calls for a chapter meeting. They come into the house, sit down, we discuss the problems and figure out if not. So if there's a problem within the house that cannot be resolved or not, we actually go in and do a flip of the house, which that means an eviction of every individual in the house and a re-interview to bring back in the people to rebuild the house.
But there's no corporate structure that is
For
monitoring.
For the house to be chartered as a Oxford house, 3 rules have to be followed. There's no drinking or drugging, they have to pay their own way, and no disruptive behavior. All the laws of the democratic process, but all the laws need to be followed of the town, state, nation, yeah.
So you said they have to pay their own way, and I think you said earlier, some of them work, some of them don't.
Most of them work. I'd say 90% of them
The
work.
ones that don't work, how do they pay their own way?
So we have some individuals that come in on fixed incomes, maybe SSI or whatnot. Those that are usually the individuals who aren't working, but anybody else who come into the house will have to be working in order to pay that EES. Because we can only let you get by so far on your EES before it becomes a problem for the house to be financially sustaining. And if you get to that point to where you're put on a contract for your rent, you have another week to make good on that contract, and if not, we'll usually evict you out and get people in there who can sustain the financial stability of the house.
So that's my question again, where do they go?
Where do they go?
Where,
That's
We can't, we can't
That's,
answer
yeah.
that.
that's-
where does any homeless person go?
Well, they become homeless then.
Right.
Well, no, they could move in with a relative.
But
We can't just,
we try to put individuals in the right position and places if possible. Some who are here, like as far as corrections, they're not able to leave Pittsburgh or Crawford County area because they're bound here by corrections. So therefore, they're almost forced in a position to where they have to be homeless because we don't have shelters or the accommodations really just in this community. But like some who can go to Joplin, I know there's a shelter in Parsons, you know, other individual places that if we can get someone to somewhere where they're not a burden in the community or they have a place or roof over their head, we do all that we can to get them there.
If it's a relapse,
Well, that's
get them
my
to
question
treatment,
again.
get
And
them
going
to.
back to the state thing, and I think everybody in here, you said earlier that had this not been a Oxford House, nobody would have questioned the sale of it. But nobody knew any of this, what was going on.
Yes, sir.
And the statute says, once again, anybody that can't leave that house because of corrections, they're on parole or probation. I don't understand.
Well, it's
how-
not leave the house. They can't leave this general area because of corrections. And that's the basic benefit of an Oxford House. Because when individuals, you know, we all make mistakes in our lives.
Sure.
And we pay our consequences and we do things and put things in place to better our lives, but we're still bound to some consequences by being on corrections or whatnot. So that's what Oxford House gives them the opportunity, instead of getting out of prison or getting out of rehab and going right back into that toxic environment, it gives us an opportunity to come back into a place that, you know, we have an opportunity and chance to stay clean and sober and not go through the non-social behaviors.
There's a comment, or somebody's had his hand up for a while.
Matt.
I've got two questions.
Stand up, Matt.
My name is Matt Curran. I actually own a property that borders two of the current Oxford homes. My question is, do you follow any state licensing? Are you licensed by the state or are you locally inspected by anyone? It sounds to me like it's ran similar to a fraternity, right, where they're local, you mentioned it, they look out for everyone. Given the history in the past, shouldn't there be someone from the outside that inspects this home? There's 8 adults living there, which 9, I think, for the other homes. How many individuals live in the other homes?
We have 6 in our house.
You have 6 in your house?
6 in Monarch.
6 in the Monarch, okay. Have you ever had anyone from the outside come in and inspect that, complete the UA, anonymously come in and say, hey, everybody, we're having a UA today?
That's what our chapter does. Our chapter does come in.
When was the last time you had a UA?
Hey, these
Well,
are inappropriate
I
questions.
had one Sunday. I can take one for you now.
No,
Okay.
I'm just curious if there's any,
Oh, yes, sir.
outside
Yes, sir.
licensing or anything.
Well, I think you.
I think we're getting off.
I think you heard her before. This comes under an ADA ruling. And that's a totally different thing. You're talking about a federal ruling here. And that's what permits this to happen. It's the original federal ruling. And it doesn't take into account city codes or state codes or anything like that. So understand that.
And maybe better to answer your question, every week we have a deck of cards. We draw 2 cards. We do a UA every week on individual random UAs. If the chapter feels necessary, the chapter could come in and drop the whole entire house. You know what I'm saying? Just
So,
because.
can we get back to really what the question is? And maybe it's for Henry, and maybe we can't answer it tonight. There still seems to be some confusion on what statute we're falling under as a city.
There is no
There isn't.
statute.
Well, I mean, there's a state statute,
But
right?
this
But
is
this
not a
is
group
not
home.
applied.
Okay, then there is nothing.
And basically what we're,
Ron.
go ahead, man.
Well, there are federal court cases that
Okay.
address these issues, and I think,
Ruled in the favor of Oxford House.
And we have a college town where we have numerous buildings where several, more than, I don't know how many college kids are living in a house. This is not the exception. I mean, this is what's going, I mean, this is something that's going on in Pittsburgh. And I think, and to Dr. Seeley and Henry's point, we need to be real careful,
About appearing that we're
federally.
discriminating.
Yes.
yeah, about discriminating against any group. But yeah, it's not there's no statute that's regulating this.
Okay.
And I know in like Overland Park, we've walked through the houses with the fire inspector and you know, a couple little things were pointed out that I'm actually very grateful for because, you know, I don't want that phone call that anything's happened. So, but if there's something like that we could do to help alleviate concerns, things like that, we'd be more than happy to.
There's 2 more comments, one on the back row.
Yes, Kevin Collin again. So I just have a quick question. So it sounds like this is under the Americans with Disabilities Act because persons with alcohol problems and drug problems fall under a disability.
In recovery.
In recovery.
Is a protected class, yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Does attempted murder in the second degree or kidnapping, inflict bodily harm to terrorize the victim, do those also fall under the American Disabilities Act? Because that, again, is a gentleman in one of these houses. So again, like I said at the beginning, I understand a drug and alcohol recovery house. And I understand that's under the Americans Disability Act, I understand the group recovery there. But again, it sounds like from this website search that there are other problems in here other than drug and alcohol offenses.
So the real question is, has that happened in Pittsburgh? And maybe the police can answer that.
Well,
This is on the KBI website. This gentleman lives in one of these houses.
If I could answer that for you, his charges aren't what brought him to Oxford. His drug and alcohol usage brought him to Oxford.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those crimes and stuff may have been in his background, but ultimately what brought him to Oxford was taking an opportunity to change his life, going to treatment, and searching for a place to get clean and sober out of the environment that he was in. So basically, his addiction and his charges have nothing to do with one another.
And I think the problem, not the problem, but the concern us citizens have is, even though that is not why he's at Oxford, that's why we are concerned. It's not the drug and alcohol that we're concerned with. It's the other charges that put him in that house.
That guy could go buy a house next to you and live next to you.
So I actually did a search on the KBI website on your zip code of the 66762.
Let's let Leanne talk.
So I actually did a search on the KBI website for the 66762, and there was 128 people on that list.
Throughout town.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's everywhere.
The list, tell me what do you mean by the list?
The list, I put in that list in a search parameter, and that many people pop back up in that list.
Okay.
During our interview process, we do ask if anybody has any registrable offenses. And there are some registrable offenses that keep an individual from being able to live in a resident Oxford. Because we understand that we are in communities with other people's families and children, just like we have families and children of our own. So, I mean, we do take that into account as far as where we place, the interview process. It's not just like, hey, I need a place to stay, come in. No, we sit down and we ask them, we make sure that they're stable, we make sure that they're gonna be.
They want recovery.
They want recovery, and they want to fit right within our community, within our houses or whatnot.
So I think we've identified that in terms of stopping this, we're not in a position to stop it.
No.
So what, Darren, what do you hear as outstanding items that the city needs to do to help clarify information?
Well, I'd just like to ask Leanne, so this is, how many of these, 3,000 in America? This can't be a unique situation.
4,600, something like that.
How is this supposed to play out? You've got, the residents are concerned, the house is disheveled at best. We now know who owns it. It's obviously gonna bring up the code.
Yeah.
The gentleman brings up a real concern over who's gonna be in it. This gentleman's done a fantastic job of explaining how he regulates the one he's in, and how the expectation is, it is a chartered situation where you can deny anybody their charter to even operate it, let alone live in it. But the concern to the neighbors is,
who's in them?
who? It's all about accountability.
So, I think it's about that, and it's about getting to know your neighbors. We've been more than happy to have like an open house, walk through, meet the people.
I mean, we recognize the natural fears of individuals in these communities, but I mean, I don't know how much it alleviates it, but we do work closely with our corrections officers and our in the parole and probation. We have an individual whose parole officer comes to the house himself to give his individual a UA or to check out his living situation. We make sure that everybody, if you need to get to your corrections officer to be there for that meeting, saying that they're there. I mean, some of our information goes back to the correct. I mean, like just the individual who's who's really got your feathers ruffled a little bit. His corrections officer works closely with him because she has other individuals in our houses
And he's doing fantastic.
He's been there 3 years. And he's actually a model, he's one of the senior members in Oxford.
That's good.
Yes, sir.
Martin?
How often does the chapter come into the house unannounced to do a walkthrough, inspect, supervise, manage, whatever you want to call it? But how often do they come in?
I think it's anytime they hear, the recovery community is actually a pretty
Tight-knit.
it's a pretty close-knit community where if we hear a little gossip about how somebody's going to be over there checking it out and looking into it. And so I would, yeah. Chapter meets monthly. They have to be following the right things, doing the right things. If a house is messing up, chapter will start going over there weekly.
I believe it's in our minute notes from I think it is April, where Greg voted for the chapter to go into each house once a month, and to drop house UAs. And we have it in our meeting notes. I really can't tell you specifically what all involved, but just glad you asked that question because it was something that we had put in place. Because we are one of the smaller chapters in the state of Kansas and one of the newer ones. So just getting off the ground running and getting our feet out from under us has been a little tough because making sure that each house is financially sustaining has been a big deal for us. But now that we're in the position to, expand and whatnot, these are different things that we're putting in place as far as the model from the other communities like in Wichita, from the houses in Wichita, our houses in Kansas City. So we're it's not baby steps and we're not new to it, but we're gearing up to to emulate that model that the other houses have provided.
So Leanne,
Yes.
There's probably more questions. Is there an opportunity for you to have like a neighborhood meeting?
Sure.
Maybe that would, people can kind of think about what we've talked about and have, a longer point or a longer time to kind of talk through as opposed to
Saturday?
this meeting.
Okay, yeah, like Saturday the 30th around 2. Saturday the 30th at 2, how's that?
Where at?
Where?
At the house? Is there a park right around there? Or a park?
Could we do it here?
Not on Saturday.
Is there a
I
park?
mean, we'd love for y'all to come into our home and see how we keep it, like I said, the upkeep of the house, the maintenance, everything, so.
You want to have them over at Phoenix?
We could use the parole office.
We can use the parole office?
There you go.
Okay,
There's still some-
parole office Saturday at 2.
Okay,
Where's the parole office?
okay.
I don't know.
By both one step.
Well, hold on here. There's a couple more questions. The main purpose of tonight and for her to come, it was to alleviate a lot of the misinformation. And I know you all have questions and I want to make sure that everyone's questions are answered. So I see a couple hands still up. I'd sure like to, go ahead back here, Sarah.
I know that in our neighborhood that there are 3 homes very close to each other within a block. Is it customary to put those houses that close together?
It is not that customary.
So it's not just, for us, it's not just having, 6 people or 8 people living in our neighborhood. It's 6 times 3, all within viewing distance of my home. And I think, I appreciate everything you go through. My husband and I, I'll say, we work with Lawrence Steiner, his dad works with Lawrence Steiner, his sister works with homelessness in Denver. So we have a very big appreciation for all the struggles that people go through. There's alcoholism in my family, so I understand that. We chose our neighborhood, and we chose where we live for our soon-to-be 5 children, because we looked at the KBI website, and we looked at the neighborhood, and we said, this is a place where we want to raise our kids, because there's other families here, and there are not people that we would question who they're talking to across the fence. And I'm not saying that anyone's a bad person, but my backyard is going to back up to that home. And I let my kids play outside in the backyard, and my neighbor's here right now, and they climb up the fence and talk to them on a daily basis, and I
will have no peace of mind not knowing who lives there. And I'm not saying I don't want to have relationships with people, I do, but it's the primary purpose as a parent is to protect who my children are influenced by, and they're not ready to make that discerning conversations with people that they don't know. And we're at the stage where we teach stranger danger. And so it doesn't matter who they are, if they're moving in new, without me, they can't talk. But this is my backyard, this is my home, this is where I picked it. And so I just feel like, as a city, whether there's nothing I can do about it or not, I think moving forward, we need to put things in place that when fraternities or other home places that come in that want to have a large group of renters in the neighborhood, they have to have a permit, and there has to be a list of steps to follow, because we were very blindsided by this, and now we're concerned. And I have no trouble with someone that has a drug or alcohol addiction. I have a lot of sympathy for that, but I don't have more sympathy for my children, and my own peace of mind is sending them outside and wondering who they're going to talk to. And that's important to me. So I would ask that the city, at least, if this can't be stopped, that would at least look at putting things into place to regulate moving forward, because now I have 3 all within a block of me, and that's not just one house,
Right.
So I understand what you're saying, and I sympathize, and I think that you're doing good work, but what my kids do, like, what are my kids, can I let them ride their bike around the neighborhood not knowing who lives at these homes or who's moving in and out? And that's also a thing, is I know who my neighbors are because I've gotten to know them and they're stable. I don't know who's moving in and out over there. I'm not going to be let know when somebody leaves or somebody moves back in, and I think that's important too. So I feel like I just need to put that out there, because there's a lot of concerns about the people that are suffering, but my kids haven't done anything.
Right.
And I should feel peace of mind for choosing my neighborhood to let them play safely, so.
All right, Betty?
Thanks.
Betty?
What's my question? Is there money to be made in this, such as if I have a house, do I contact you and I want to sell my house? And then who's making money? Is the charity or?
No. The landlord, it's a regular landlord-tenant lease.
So the man that owns it, he's making money.
Well,
So
I mean,
we
if
want-
anybody owns a house that rents it, they make money.
So it's still kind of like an Airbnb. I mean, if I wanted, we could do that.
You could.
Yeah. So it's kind of.
So, I mean, I guess the owner's making the money because, yeah, like any rental, though.
All right, over here. You? I'm sorry.
I had kind of a question about, I know you said that you interviewed the individuals, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I know it's all alcohol and drug related, and I understand that. But if I'm thinking correctly, it's near a middle school or near a grade school. So if a gentleman comes to you for drug and rehab, but he also is a registered sexual offender, will he be turned away?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
And is that on his word, or do you guys have proof of that?
Well, that's where we had an instance that she was explaining earlier. We had one slip under the radar, but that was because at the age of 19, him and a 16-year-old girl had a situation together, which that situation has followed him his entire life.
That's why we let him in. He was not asked the question.
He was not
asked the question, and we have since revamped our interview process. We actually have a laminated sheet that goes through the interview process with each interviewee, whereas it is an actual question that is said, are you a registered sex offender? We have enough stigma, and that's an offense that we can't. Arson and sex offense, we can't, and we don't. It did happen, but because of discrimination, we couldn't change it after the fact, and the gentleman's actually doing really, really well.
And we've become more proactive with going onto the websites, doing more.
Due diligence.
I'm not saying against anybody, because I know we all make mistakes.
Well, I
But
understand.
that is a concern.
Yeah, absolutely, I got it, yeah.
You got one more back there.
Yeah.
This guy's been real patient in the red shirt.
I can't see, but who's got
His
the red
hand's
shirt?
not very
Oh,
high,
there
but
you
it's
are.
probably enough.
Dustin. go ahead.
Yeah, I live just about 3 blocks away from this new house apparently. I just want to kind of note as far as maybe some city ordinances of some sort, because what you guys are doing is awesome, and it looks like the numbers are great, but unfortunately, we have to, as neighbors, we're looking at the bad numbers. So according to your website, 19% of people that are in these Oxford houses are relapsed, they're expelled. So you have a 19%, roughly 1/5 of everybody that's gonna be in that house is gonna, you have a 20% chance that somebody in each house is gonna be on the
Nationally,
downside.
Kansas numbers are a little bit better, but yes.
Correct, but statistically, there is going to be somebody that could be in trouble, you know, and that's what we are looking at. We hope everybody turns out like you, everybody's doing great, but that's what we're worried about, is that 10 to 20%.
Right.
I just want that to be noted.
Taken off the street.
Yeah.
Well, I think you'll find in anything that has to do with the penal area, you're gonna find recidivism. And if you can get 20%, you're gonna be pretty lucky.
Yeah. That, and I
Because
mean.
usually it's higher, it's much higher than that.
And I hate to say this, but there could just be an incident down the street and not because of anything. I mean, stuff happens. I mean, people, I hate to say it.
I hate to say this, but I live 2 houses down from this house that's gonna be put in, and I have children, and across the street from me, just catty-cornered, on our same block, is a registered sex offender. And there was nothing that I could do or say that was gonna get that person out of here. And he's closer to the school. than Yes, my house and is. he's closer to the school.
All right. So I think, you know, you have one more question here? Sorry.
I just wanted to state, I measured from the north property line of 2404 to the front door to the south property line of George Nettle School, and it's 1,309 feet.
I don't know what the
What that has to
statute-
do with,
So you're saying that if somebody was to slip through the cracks again, that there would be nothing, that they wouldn't be breaking the law. But, can you guys hear me? So, I
You
know
can
that.
stand-
you need to stand
You can
up.
stand up at the mic, go ahead.
My name's Keisha, I'm in long-term recovery. I actually commented on the Facebook post, and in the discussions that we've had with myself and Chuck and Leanne, the core chapter members understand that the neighborhood has some concerns. And before we open this house, we are going to establish more rigid questions and more a process that's going to allow us to integrate your concerns with our process, because if we're there, we're there. And we do not need to have any additional confrontation or problems with the neighborhood. So we have decided to discuss and with our chapter to make sure that we are meeting the standards that you guys have, as far as even the violent stuff might be something that we are going to be able to not accept. We never give reasons to our interviewees as to why we don't accept them, because that's discrimination. But if they do not receive 80% of the votes of the people that are in the house, the members that are in the house, then they will not be accepted.
Well, I think that's the concerns of the people here. I think you guys probably negotiated with the owner on this Oxford house of what was gonna be set up. I don't know how long that process took. And I'm not saying these people need to know anything about that, but that is their concerns, that they have no idea, and probably till a week ago, this is gonna happen, and you can hear all the concerns they have, and understandably so. I don't know if you maybe, look in hindsight, maybe had a neighborhood meeting before all this happened, but it didn't. And it sounds like, you said the date, I didn't write it down, somebody did.
So, July 30th, thank you, July 30th, 2 p.m. at 1008 West 4th Street in Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Is that,
That's the parole office.
but is it large enough to accommodate, maybe there might be more people that want
She
to
said
come?
yes.
Okay.
So is
So,
there a sign, do we have a sign-up sheet in the back? I guess if you want to be be notified of this meeting.
Sure.
You might want to sign the sheet or
sure.
that way.
Start piece.
And it was all about putting out good information. And there's a lot of questions, but it's all about the credible information.
Yes.
And to alleviate some of the you know, getting the train
Concerns,
off the
things
track
like that.
there. But,
I totally
but I
understand.
sure appreciate you coming here.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for
I was
having me.
very glad to talk to you, and the city will, you know, hopefully keep everything in check, and hopefully the owner will contact him and talk to him about the house.
And if there's any concerns, on the pamphlet is the office number. I also have a business card, with my cell phone number. Anybody can call me at any time.
Sure.
So
Feel
thank
free
you.
to come up and talk to her afterwards.
Yep, yes.
You can stay for a while, they can talk. Did everyone feel that their questions were answered for the most part? All right. Darren, do you have any other? No. Okay.
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn by Don, seconded by Doc. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for being here.